We are in for a treat tonight. Our own New Bedford Civil War Roundtable member, Jack Richer, is going to be leading us in a presentation today. Jack is a retired principal of Charles E. Shea Senior High School after a 33-year career with the Pawtucket School District. Prior to his 7-year administrative career, Jack taught French and English at Shea High School and Lyman B. Goff Junior High. He also served as the boys varsity coach at Tucket West and Shea High School team and as the French club advisor for 10 years. Jack, I did not know that you were the top.
Oui, ce soir, je vais parler en français. Pour tout le monde.
What he said. Jack studied at Providence College and received his degree in education with a certificate in French, English history, and English as a second language. He received his master's degree from Providence College in secondary school administration. He also has a middle school endorsement in administration from Bridgewater State University. He is now fully retired but remains on the executive board of the Pawtucket Credit Union. He is also a member of the Rhode Island Civil War Roundtable and the Varnum Continentals in East Greenwich. He is also an active member of the East Providence Historical Society, serving on the Education and Fundraising Committee. And in addition to all that, Jack is a board member of the New Bedford Civil War Roundtable as well. Jack's love for the battlefield at Antietam or Sharpsburg, whichever one you prefer. I know Jack prefers Antietam. It always shines through. He is a true historian of the battle and will be talking to us a little bit more about the battle and his recent experiences at the most recent symposium at the battlefield. And with that, Jack.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. Amen. Which way you want to go? Okay. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As Mark said, I am Jack Richer. And the first thing I want to start out with is in October 15th through the 17th, my wife, God bless my wife, because she comes with me to all of these things, and I read everything. She walks. She loves to walk, thank God. But while we were here, this was a 3-day institute. And while we were down there, just being, one of those things, being in the presence of these gentlemen and ladies that were speaking there, I mean, I was hoping osmosis would take place and I would just absorb some of this stuff. Now, the gentleman on the left over here is Chris Vincent. He is in charge of, he's the president of the Antietam Institute. The gentleman to his right was our keynote speaker, that's Dennis Fry. He had a 40-year career as a National Park Ranger or a battlefield ranger at Antietam and at Harper's Ferry. And now all of these gentlemen are part of the Antietam Institute as well. Larry. This guy here, hopefully you know who he is, that's Dr. Tom Clemens. He found a compilation of historical documents from the Battle of Antietam that were written by Ezra Ayers Carman. And Ezra Ayers Carman was a colonel in the 13th New Jersey. That's one of the Green regiments that did not know how to load a rifle the night before the battle. And Dr. Tom Clemens found it. He edited all these works and put out a 3-volume set, which I did bring with me somewhere. Larry, where'd you put all that stuff? Oh, it's behind me. So if we'd been here sooner, I would have put them out. But if someone wants to look at them afterwards, you can. So this, how many people have been to this battlefield? Okay. So this is up near the Newcomer House. It's Tidball's Battery. So where we are, the cannons would be facing across the Antietam Creek, as they say down there. And on the other side would be where Lee had the center of his battle line as well. Here, this is Ezra Ayers Carman right here. He was the historian, as you see on the bottom here, from 1894 to 1898. He would write to Confederate soldiers, to Union soldiers, and he compiled where they were on the battlefield, what they were doing, anything else they could think of, and he wrote this document on it. After he left here, he became involved with the Chattanooga-Chickamauga battlefield, and that's where he ended up spending the rest of his career. But what a read. If you ever have several weeks to read. If you're a slow reader like me, this is the guy to read if you want to know about this battlefield. Now, some of these gentlemen, I'd seen them on TV, but I don't really know who they were. But this is Jim Rosebrock, and he tells, this is up, now we're on the other side. We're on Lee's side over here. And up behind us is across the street from the Antietam National Cemetery. And up there, early in the morning on September 17th, we had General James Longstreet, Robert E. Lee, and they were looking over the battlefield. If you look to that side over there, you can't see it over the hill, but that's where the battle had started. Now, all of a sudden, General Daniel Harvey Hill comes up, and he's on horseback. And they go like, get off that horse. You're going to make us a target. And no sooner did Longstreet turn to his right when he sees this puff of smoke coming from the opposite hill. It's Stephen Weed's battery, a 10-pound Parrott rifle. He fires a shot. Now, I don't know what the first best one was, but Longstreet said that was the second best shot he'd ever seen. He never said what the first one was, but it took the horse's front legs off of Hill's horse. The poor thing's down there on two stumps, and now Hill's trying to get off the horse, and he didn't know which end to get off. But he finally got off. I want to know what kind of a round that would have been that didn't blow up and nobody else was injured. Just the poor horse lost its legs. Now, this is an up-and-coming young man, Kevin Pollock right here. And they were both speaking here. Then we crossed the street and we went over to the other side to see where the artillery was all set up. But Kevin Pollock, author, really great guy. I had supper with him the night before at the, where we, Spring Retreat Center. And you're going to see a lot from this young man. And this is my favorite battlefield guide, Steve Stottlemyre. This one here, he was doing the final attack. My wife, he and I, we walked this whole final attack. He said, I've been with him so many times, this is like the fourth time we were down there. He said, I don't know what else to show you. I've taken you to places that I've never been to before. But at least he studies the night before so he can figure it all out. And then way in the back over there, I don't know if you can see him or not, but we've got Dr. Tom Clemens is over there as well, and he did a piece on the Burnside Bridge. I've got to find something here, Larry. Okay. So now, this is Bill Sagal, and behind him is Bob Gottschalk. And they could be a comedy team. I didn't know you could make Civil War history funny, but they did it. And behind them, this is over near the Visitors Center, and in the back over there, right over there, there's a cannon. That's part of Tompkins Battery. And down over in that area there would be where the sunken road is, which is going to become Bloody Lane and part of it. Next one. Okay, this is Bob Gottschalk out here. And he came in from Indianapolis just to do this. Now this cornfield here, it's about 30 acres of corn. I don't know if you've ever walked through 30 acres of corn. I would not want to walk through 30 acres of corn, but that's a lot of corn right there. And the northern part of the battlefield is up in that region over there. That's called the North Woods. If you go to this battlefield, it's easy to figure out. There's the North Woods, the East Woods, and the West Woods. Sorry, no South Woods. So now here's all this corn, and they kept promising us, this is a Sunday morning after it rained the day before, and they said we will finally get to the battle, the bloody cornfield. And this is David Miller's cornfield. Larry? This is what it would be like to walk through corn. I mean, you got 30 acres, that's a long way. You've got artillery rounds coming in from the west, and you've got gunshots, musket balls, mini balls coming through at you, and you can't even see the enemy. Now, just a quick discussion on the other side over here. Robert E. Lee. Why did he go up into fight up here? Well, he had strategic reasons, logistical reasons, and political reasons. Now, we had one speaker, I didn't name all the speakers, it would be beyond that, just speakers. His name is Dr. Rogers Fred. And I kept going, Rogers Fred, shouldn't it be Fred Rogers? You know, I expect a guy with a sweater to be up there and, you know, and wonderful day in the neighborhood. But no, he was a veterinary oncologist. And he said that amateurs study tactics and pros study logistics. Because if you have to move an army and you have to feed animals and you have to, you know, feed them and everything, one horse, I found this out, eats 26 pounds of fodder a day. One. And you know how many horses they had? They left 269 dead ones on the battlefield, so I can't tell you how many horses there were. So why did he go there? Well, he was trying to get all of the, you know, the northern troops out of Virginia so the Shenandoah Valley would be free to bring in all of their crops. And the Shenandoah Valley was going to be his line of communication and his line of supply. He had just moved from Culpeper, his base, up into Winchester, which is in the Shenandoah Valley. Now, I could talk about just that all day, but that's why he was up there. So now, logistical. He has to move all of these men up there. These men have a problem right off the bat. They've just fought so many battles. They chased, I hate to say this, they chased McClellan off of the peninsula. They won Second Manassas. They fought at the Battle of Chantilly. This is all before, this is by September 1st. And now he's getting ready to rev up into Maryland. He wants to go to Maryland because if he goes up there, he can pick where he wants to fight, so he believes. He can get all of the army of, because we're going to be talking about something else, a turning movement pretty soon. But he is going to be able to, he thinks in Maryland, feed his troops, clothe his troops, bring in more troops from Maryland. And that didn't happen. When they went there, that didn't happen. Were there Marylanders that fought for the Confederacy? Yes, about 20,000. Were there Marylanders that fought for the Union? Yes, about 80,000. So there was some Confederate sympathies, but, and then political. He wanted to stay in Maryland until late October, November to try and influence the election, which was on November 4th, midterm elections. Oh, we're going to be hearing a lot about that around here pretty soon. And when they had these midterm elections on November 4th, and he won, he kept his slim majority, what happened the next day to McClellan? He got the boot. And he found out on the 7th that he had gotten knocked out of the army. So he went over there thinking that everything was going to be beautiful. Okay? Is he a traitor? He fits the classic definition of a traitor if you look in the Constitution. He fought against the United States. He gave aid and comfort to the enemy. Oh, he's a bad boy. Is he a good tactician? I think so. But, all right. General George McClellan, the most maligned man. You know, when I first got into this, I was in college. I was a history major, by the way. Never taught a day of it, but I was a history major. I'm in freshman history class, and I'm hearing all this nasty stuff about this guy. Oh, he was a bum. Why did they even bring him back a second time? But if you read this wonderful book by my battlefield guide, who loves McClellan, right here, Too Useful to Sacrifice, it will give you a whole new perspective on him. And then, what's the worst thing that he could have done? What do winning generals become? President. He was a Democrat. Who was in office? Republicans. Do you think that Stanton and all of his cronies wanted him to be successful? No, because they knew he would be a threat in 1864 in the election to go there. So this is one of his big things, trying to run for president. Do you think that a lot of things get changed around in the history books and they cherry-picked stuff in the official records? I do. All right. Now, this is Washington, D.C. down here. This is Lee's army, and some of them are already, this is the Potomac River. This is Harper's Ferry. Now, I almost fell over when I heard this, because what do we hear all the time? What numbers do I have down there? How many men did the poor Confederates have? They only had half the number of men that McClellan, he should have beaten their pants off. Well, guess what? They left Leesburg, named after his father, with 75,000 men. Yes, 75,000. He ended up with what, about 26 or 28, I think, when he left Antietam? Now, they're all over here. They're going to cross the Potomac. There's White's Ford over here. There's Pointer Rocks over here. When they go across, before they go across, a lot of them are like, I didn't sign up to invade the North. I signed up to fight for my state, for my country, for the Confederacy. I'm not going over there. And then an order came out, anyone that's sick, and I heard this one, I don't know how much faith to put in, if you don't have any shoes, and that's all we hear about, the Confederates didn't have any shoes, you're going to go to Winchester. Well, Lee, when he's crossing the river, he thinks that they're all going to exit Harper's Ferry, and that's where we ended up. They have the Special Orders 191, which is a lot of hooey. That's, you might think those were the only orders that the enemy had captured from somebody. They used to capture each other's orders all the time. But McClellan had already had everybody in motion, so it didn't make a hill of beans in my book. So anyway, now they're going across the Potomac. By the time they get up here to Frederick, they're down to 64,000 men. 11,000 men have gone to Winchester, or maybe they went home. Maybe they deserted because there's a lack of food, but they think when they cross over that they're going to be welcomed with open arms. What happens as they're crossing the river? Oh, Maryland, my Maryland. This is the Confederates singing as they're going into Maryland. They didn't get a very good reception. The people there were kind of like, psst, we don't want to have anything to do with you. We want to buy some supplies. We don't want Confederate money. Some people took it. Maybe they were fearful they would just pillage them. But this is now, remember, this army has just been beaten. Pope got beat up. McClellan's army was with Pope. We had the 9th Corps. We had, Kearney, Isaac Stevens was killed at the Battle of Chantilly with Philip Kearney, and they had all those divisions they had to reorganize. So now they have to block this road up here to Baltimore, they have to keep their back to Washington, and they have to keep an eye on the Potomac. So that's his job, to reorganize all of these men. Larry? Now, what I do have a map of it, and I can post it afterwards. I have the Simon Green Elliott burial map of Antietam. Now, this just blew my mind when I heard about this. And this guy is Tim Smith. He's from Gettysburg. He works at Gettysburg. He went to the New York Public Library and typed in this guy's name, Simon Green Elliott. He's trying to do some research for Andrew Dalton, who you'll see next. He types it in and he sees this map, start to beep, 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 beep. Now and he's looking at it, he's going like, Smoketown Road? The Shopsburg Pike, Hagerstown Pike should be. Oh my God, his brain's saying Gettysburg. It was a map of Antietam that no one had ever seen since probably 1864 when it was made. Nobody knew it existed. But the New York Public Library was digitizing all these old documents, and this came up. Okay? Now this is Andrew Dalton, this is his sidekick from, again, they're in Gettysburg. And they started to study this map. Look what they came up with. Union graves, 2,634. Now that's not too far from what they originally had for there. But then, when we have, where did that go? So now, when it has 115 single, if your friend died on the battlefield, he probably stood with you. He may have been a tent mate or whatever. You would go hunting for your friend on the battlefield, and you would probably give him a private burial. So that's what all these singles are. 40 of them still had names on them. They're not all spelled correctly, because who knows why? But they're not all spelled correctly. But the records that I've been finding are just crazy. Look at the Confederates. 3,210 graves. What does it say on that paper that I gave you on how many Confederates are dead on that page? There's 1,500. This is twice as many as they believed were killed. And not to brag, but General McClellan in his official record, he had, I think 2,500 for the Union and over 3,000. He came the closest than most of these other people. But this is the Elliott map. This is unbelievable. That makes a total number of graves, which is always believed that it was 3,654 deaths on that battlefield. What does this add up to? 5,844. That's a big difference. All those, whew. All right, Larry? Okay. Here's the map. It's right in this tube. Now, once again, this is the whole battlefield. This is about 3.5, 4 miles long right here. And what we have up here, this is where the battle begins. This is the North Woods. On this side over here, the Confederates are partially up over in this area when the battle begins, but this is the East Woods. This is the West Woods over here. And like I said, there's no South Woods, but this is where Burnside's going to be fighting. Now up in this little corner where the creek, where the Antietam Creek is, that's where the headquarters, it says on the map that is General McClellan's. It was not during the battle, it was General McClellan's, but that was General Joe Hooker's headquarters. And way over here this is Sharpsburg. This is where the Confederates get the name. Over here is General Robert E. Lee's headquarters. The only thing is, when you visit there, they have a sign in a grove in the woods that's over here. So maybe we can figure out from somebody doing research who is absolutely correct. There's a nice sign there, there's a monument. But anyway, okay, well, Larry hit it. All right, now this is down the bottom here, battlefield of Antietam. H.H. Lloyd from New York made this, and here's the guy right here. Here's the one that did the map. Simon Green Elliott, certified engineer. Now, this is bizarre because he made this map in 1864 when he made the map at Gettysburg. They were both made the same year. So now the Battle of Antietam was in 1862. Here it is, 2 years later. How did he know where all of these bodies were buried, where all these graves were? Well, fortunately for him, and probably for us, they had not figured out what they were going to do with all these bodies, and they were still in the ground. They had not been exhumed. So he was able to go out there. But he was also very fortunate that there were some enterprising young men who, after the battle, had gone out and mapped it all out. He was going to go, they got a bad reputation because they were asking people for money to show them where their loved ones may be buried, because this is the descriptions they would have. Okay, I am very sorry for your loss, but your son is buried in the Mumar farm, second field over, near the sassafras tree that has a fork in it. I've never been to this place before. I'm lucky I found this place, you know? So, you know, if you give me $5, I'll show you where it is, you know? And so in the newspapers around there, they started to do things like that. So now we did it with a transit and a chain. Apparently the chain is 66 feet long, and I didn't research that, why it's 66 feet long. Maybe some engineers in here can tell me that. But he mapped it all out. And here's the legend. And when we look at the battle map, you can see the Union graves look like a cross, the rebels look like a straight line, the dead horses look like apostrophes, and there's 269 of them. Mostly, where would you find them, do you think? Near where the artillery was. Because what's one of the things they used to shoot? They used to try and shoot the horses so they couldn't run away with that. This was a eureka moment for me right here. Rebel breastworks. I had never heard of the rebels other than, you know, maybe being behind a wall or something like, or behind a fence. And I didn't get to ask anybody, like, where are these? I don't remember ever seeing them. And then these are the batteries. That's supposed to be a cannon. I guess it's the wheels on the artillery pieces. So that's what we're going to be looking at in the legend, Larry. Larry the Legend. Now, if you look, that's your new name. This, as you can see here, Knapp's Battery, and there's only one P. I keep wanting to put two, but anyway, they were from Pennsylvania, and this is, if you've been there, is right behind where the New York Monument is. That's a state monument, and there's also next to it is the 20th New York Monument, the only regiment that has two monuments at the battlefield, and near the visitor center. But you'd probably see a little pot. They didn't usually move the horses, I don't think, too far, although they got some farmers to pull them into a pile, and then they would burn the horses. Okay, that's what I just told you about in that bend. That's McClellan's headquarters during the day of the battle. If you go to the next slide, we'll show you the Pry House, which is where it is. If you go to this battlefield, please go to the Pry House, go behind. You have a scenic overview of the battlefield. So that's why it was such an advantageous position. The only problem is trees grow. You don't have the view that you would have had back in the day. And there's a nice little museum over there as well. Okay, in your packet, this is just the northern part of the battlefield, but this is where there's supposedly 13,860 casualties. Now I've always heard that for every one killed, that there were 4 wounded. And for every 4 wounded, 1 out of 7 is mortally wounded. So and a friend of mine who's a math professor at Rhode Island College, he said this was correct. I came up with 4,356 killed just on this part of the battlefield. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. Could you imagine you walking out on that battlefield? You're one of the later corps that's coming out, and we'll talk about the second corps coming across this battlefield, and seeing all these dead and wounded, and you can't stop and give them a drink of water or anything. You just have to keep on running by them. So now this is the Hagerstown Pike right here. That's the main thoroughfare. This is the Smoketown Road, and then later on we're going to be going down over here and talking about the Muma Farm. It looks like Mama, but it's Muma. They talk funny down there because Lafayette McLaws is Lafayette McLaws down there. So anyway, okay, so here's all of these little lines right here. You can probably see them better on your map. You can see how many Confederates and how many Union soldiers were actually buried there. That's just burials. And I don't know if this counts people that came from Pennsylvania or from surrounding areas, even maybe Maryland, that came to get their family members that had been buried there. Now this is where the battle began. This is the Joseph Poffenberger farm. If you ever meet that Dennis Fry that I showed you at the beginning, he is from Shopsburg. His mother, and he will tell you this, my mother was a Poffenberger. And I think that's pretty cool. A lot of German in that area over there. Okay, Larry? He's got 2 brothers there. Now here's this quiet farm here. This is the Miller family, and they're sitting out on their porch. They believe that this might be David over here, but their house didn't incur too much wrath. Every building that was around, every barn, every lean-to, anywhere they could put a wounded soldier was filled to the gills. But this is the David Miller farm, and then right in front of his farm is going to be total death. This is just Lee's headquarters, as I showed you before. Go ahead, Larry. Now, Timothy Smith and Andrew Dalton have made this discovery. Nobody knows about it. Who do you think would really like to know about it? The American Battlefield Trust. I would love to meet this guy. This is Gary Edelman. He is a bundle of nerves. He does not stop for one moment. He's like a jitterbug. He's all over the place. He is one funny guy. This particular picture is taken up, if you've ever been to Bolivar Heights at Harper's Ferry. That's where this picture is taken. Okay, but when they told him, oh my God, he had a conniption. Now this is one of the park rangers, Brian Barras, and Brian, when he saw it, they were speechless. So what does he do? He starts counting all those little lines out there. I tried it. Forget it. I stopped. I did count some. But his wife said, why don't we do an Excel spreadsheet? Okay, hit it. And there's a spreadsheet. So right on top, the guy that we'll be talking about in a bit, John Marshall. John Marshall, it's got his actual name, it's got the name that's on the board that they stuck in the ground. It's got what his rank was, it has the regiment, it has, what was that one? I can't even read that. But anyway, and then this is the date of death. And all of these people were killed on September the 17th. Now here's the Dunker Church. At Gettysburg, what did the troops focus on? The copse of trees. At Shiloh, the Shiloh Church. Here is the Dunker Church. Now, Ezra Common, who wrote the definitive text on this, called this a schoolhouse when he did his official record report. So they weren't even sure what it was. It looks like a schoolhouse, it could be that. Who is it named for? The Dunkers. What did the Dunkers do? When they would baptize you, total immersion. They dunked you. So that's what it was. After the battle, you can see Stephen Dill Lee's artillery unit got a little beat up here. After, some enterprising young man came and opened up an embalming shop, because you could not ship anybody home on a train that had not been embalmed, and then they were in a sealed casket, because you can imagine after a couple of days what that field must have smelled like. But what's great about this, Alexander Gardner took pictures here for Brady. And he and his mate James Gibson, they took 74, 79 pictures on here, and many of them are the money shots that they wanted with the dead bodies. That's what they wanted to show people. And these photos show where these things happened on there, Larry. This is along, I will show you in a moment, this fence right here. This is the Hagerstown Pike. These are members of the William Stark's Louisiana Tigers. And in the reports, Oliver Otis Howard, who had lost his arm previous to this time, he talks in his report about these 6-rail fences. These 6-rail fences are almost impossible to move. And can you imagine you're on the other side? They're probably as tall as these men. Okay, could you hold my gun, Larry, while I climb over here? Could you imagine what a target you would be? And they're built so low to the ground. But I mean, you can see all of these distorted bodies. They're starting to blow up. And then, you know what the gases do? They empty the contents of your body. So it really reeks. Okay, Larry? This is along where these men would have been found, right along over here. And while I have this shot up here, here's the Hagerstown Pike. Notice, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When I went and they had 5, I never noticed that there were 6 rails in the pictures that Gardner took. You know what they did up there? They changed it so it's perfectly aligned to what was there when the battle took place. I don't know how many millions it cost them, but now there's 6 rail fences. Over here, these are state statues. This is the statue from Massachusetts. This statue with this gentleman out up here, his name is Hugh Irish. He was the first member of the New Jersey regiment to get killed. There's an honor, right? They put you up on top there. And then this other one over here, these are the largest mini balls that you'll ever see. It's kind of nice. That's from Indiana, and this one is a Pennsylvania monument. This is Stark Avenue over here, and the Cornfield Avenue is here. Okay, Larry? More poor dead tigers that are over here, but I always look at this little guy right here, and I feel so badly. It's almost like he'd been shot, and now he's peering back. Is this his father behind him? Is it his brother? Or is it just a friend that he's looking back at in his death stare? I think this is one of the saddest pictures I've seen. There's another one coming up too. Okay, Larry? Now, here's the crazy men from Texas, the Texas Brigade. They lost more men in the war than they and I think the Iron Brigade of the West. I think they were the 2 most damaged units. think one of them lost like 4,000 men during the course of the whole war, and they just keep replenishing them. But here they're going through the corn. And after the battle, Lee says to John Bell Hood, "General, where are your men?" And he responded, "They're out on the field where you sent them. I have no division." One of the 1st Texas lost 82.3% of their men. If they went in with 226, they came out with about 189, 190 men. And you're going to see, if you look at your maps, there's a lot of little tick marks where they are. Larry? And if you look at your map, this is where they engaged. They came out, the Dunker Church is down around here. They would have come out into the field. The 4th Texas had come up over here, and the William Wolford and Evander Law, they all went into the corn over here, and there's an awful lot of lines that have to do with those particular men for sure. You can see every line represents a soldier's grave. Just this portion, 1,539 Union graves, 2,331 Confederates. Now that's just this part. This number over here is for the whole battlefield. But there's another guy, Welker I think his name was, from HistoryNet, and I don't know where he got his number from, he came up with 6,043 graves. So I don't know where he found that number, but again, I'm not going to comment to try and figure it out. This is the Westwoods today. When I was just there in October, you can see the leaves are falling off the trees. In a lot of parts of the battlefield, if trees were there when the battle took place, they planted trees. If there were no trees, they're cutting them down. So this is another area where they were. I've been in there in the summertime, and it is dark in there. And the undulations, because it's all limestone in there, and there's all kinds of pockets. So it would be a great place for those Confederates to hide behind all of there. And I don't think it was a bright sunny day, but you know how it is when you go from light to dark. You know, your eyes are trying to adjust, and then you see this flame of muskets coming at you. Okay, now on your map, up on the left-hand side, maybe you can find this. It looks like it's 1st MD for 1st Maryland. Well, 1st Maryland didn't fight at Sharpsburg, at Antietam. They fought up at Maryland Heights at Harper's Ferry. So there is a 1st Maryland, but they did not fight here. So now, some enterprising individual that was researching this, they found that this is 1st Minnesota. You know, you look, there's a great, Bradley Godfrey has written maps of Antietam and maps of Gettysburg. That is my Bible when I am reading anything about this particular battle. But they looked up, they found in a newspaper an obituary for Oscar L. Lionel Cornman. And he's from the 1st Minnesota. And his fellow 1st Minnesotans, they brought him here because they thought it was a peaceful area and a grove of trees, and they wanted him, quote unquote, to be away from the clangor of battle. And this is where they buried him, but when they made the map, or they kind of made a boo-boo there. Okay, Larry? Now this gentleman, Colonel Turner Gustavus Moorhead. Now if you do the math, he's only 48 years old in this picture. I thought he was 148. But he's a tough old guy, I want to tell you. He was in the 106th, which we'll be talking about with Oliver Otis Howard's 2nd Corps. And when he went into battle, he's on a horse. All the officers are on horses. The horse gets blown out from under him, falls on top of him. Now he gets up, his men, they're trying to pull him out. The Confederates are coming, they want to get away. All of a sudden he goes, "My sword. I don't know where my sword is." So what does he do? He starts going back. "No, sir, don't do that. I promise to defend the sword with my life. Won't let damned rebels get it." So he goes back, he retrieves it. The Confederates are saying, "Surrender, surrender." Nope. Grabs his sword, runs off, and lives through another day. I would like to know where on the battlefield this is. I would like to go there. But quite the guy. We're going to talk about the 106 in a second, because you're going to be surprised like I was. I learned something about that particular group. Now, some of you may know Bob Carlson. He's usually, when it comes to Civil War weaponry, he's the guy. I know he's the president of an association, a Civil War Round Table on the other side of Worcester. I forget the name of it offhand. But Bob, as you can see, well, maybe you don't know, this is a monument on the battlefield of Antietam to the 15th Massachusetts. The 15th got absolutely destroyed. They lost 104 killed out of their group. And now this 1860 Colt revolver that he has, and he calls it a field glass. I call it a monocular myself. But anyway, those were actually owned by this gentleman, Captain John Saunders, who was at that battlefield. And he was a member of the Andrews Sharpshooters, which was attached to the 15th. And another thing I was very envious about Bob, he was there with Ed Bars on this battlefield and got to show those weapons to Ed Bars. Ed Bars was like, I don't know, he's indescribable. He knew more about every battlefield than anyone. He was just a font of information. And he just passed away 2 years ago, maybe, something like that. Yeah. Okay, so now, Larry. Now, this is what the whole statue looks like. It's the wounded lion is what it is. And I saw a great picture. They had the veterans come back, and they were all surrounding it when this monument was dedicated. And that's my buddy right there, Steve Stottlemyre. And next one, Larry. Okay, again, West Woods, North Woods would be up over here, East Woods. And the Dunker Church is right down over in here for a little orientation. Now, up here, if you can look into your little bag of tricks there, you'll see First Cal. First Cal. Now I'm thinking, did they make a little boo-boo and it should be First Cavalry? How's this? You know what that stands for? First California. We had Californians fighting here. They were the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 5th California. That blew my mind. But one of Abraham Lincoln's best friends that was killed at Ball's Bluff, Ed Baker, he was a senator from Oregon, he helped to arrange to send them to the East Coast. And they are going to become what? The 71st, 69th, 72nd, and the 106th under Moorhead, Pennsylvania infantry regiments. So they were Californians. Aren't you glad you came to school today? Okay. All right, this is one of the maps from Bradley Gottfried, Maps of Antietam. And the second Corps had come out of the woods over here, and they had marched into the West Woods, and this is where they got absolutely surrounded. Now the 15th is right down here on the end. They get hit from the front, they get enfiladed from the side by Barksdale and I think Jubal Early, and then the 59th New York, who is behind them, is shooting into their backside. They're getting shot at from 3 sides. So this whole group gets really beaten up badly, and they end up basically heading north. So that's why we're going to find some of these graves up in this area. So maybe they brought wounded up there and they died, or maybe they were just killed up there. Okay. Now, this is one of the gentlemen from Mississippi. He was one of William Barksdale's boys. That's Lieutenant J.M. Roberts. And the Confederates stayed in the ground until about 1874, when they were moved to Hagerstown. Rose Hill is one of them. And as many times, well, not 4 times to Hagerstown, but I've spent so much time at the battlefield. You're not too far from Harper's Ferry, you're not too far from South Mountain, you're not too far from Monocacy, that just to go to a cemetery, there's plenty of cemeteries to go to. Someday I will. But every building that you see on there, this is probably their house, this is probably their barn. Maybe it's the other way around. But the locker's name comes up frequently, that they were buried near a fence in the locker's field and so on and so forth. So these are all Confederates. This line right here I want to bring your attention to because it says 42nd New York. The 42nd New York only had 41 casualties. There are 95 graves here. So it's really believed, not yet proven, but it's believed that the remainder, or many of the others, is from the 15th Massachusetts, who lost 104 killed. Okay, Larry? So these are the things that they're trying to figure out when they're looking at the map now. Okay, so here it is, 104 killed. How would you like to go in with those numbers? They lost 318 out of 582 men. That's a bloodbath, okay? Okay, so now I talk to you about Smoketown Road. Now if you come up Smoketown, right over here, 15th Massachusetts, well, West Woods is way on the other side. So why would there be two guys here? So I started looking through the 15th and I found sometimes they would bury officers separately, and I found Captain Richard Derby and Captain Simmons, or Simmons, I don't know how he pronounces his name, and potential. I can't prove it, but I thought it was a good lead. This guy down here, John Applin, it says 13th New York, pretty close. He's the 13th New Jersey, and who was in charge of the 13th New Jersey? Ezra Ayers Carman. That's one of his boys. But this whole pile of them right here, all these graves right here are all Union, so there could be more of his particular regiment in there. Now, this is one of the burial details. As the dead were being entombed and earthed, this is where Alexander Gardner was out getting his money shots again. Here's these poor guys out here. I don't know how well you can see it. These guys are all blown up. They've been on the battlefield for a while. Remember, they buried their own first. They buried the Union first. What did they do with the Confederates? They just lied there in the sun and blew up and turned black and got really smelly. Now, this guy right here does not look anything like that. And in my head, I'm going like, that guy was taking a nap. He's probably one of these guys that's supposed to be digging graves, but he's taking a nap. At least I hope for his sake he was. And that's on Cornfield Avenue. Okay, what did they use? They used a spade. And what's that bent hook over there? That is a bayonet that they would have heated up, and they make a curve. So is that so if there's somebody around the corner, you can get them? No, they would use that to hook the dead bodies, to drag them into the graves. Brutal. It's not like you're going to hurt them. But do you want to touch a body that's festering and oozing and everything else? But enough of that. It only gets worse from here about how they do this. Larry? This is a little close-up of them. I still think this guy's sleeping. But anyway, one of the good things that if you were doing this duty is that usually the commanding officers would get you lots of whiskey, because this is not a job to be done sober. So whiskey became a burial crew's best friend. Larry? This is where that picture was taken by Alexander Gardner. And on this kettle right here, I tried to grab one of those rifles. They're not real, and they're really stuck in there really well, so don't try it either. It says on here, right on this kettle, here fought the 90th Pennsylvania, September 17th, 1862, a hot place. So I took out my map book and I followed the 90th. Where were they? Well, they were like up in the corner where the Texas Brigade had been fighting. So that's why I like that map book by Bradley Gottfried. And he just helped out with another one, Brigades. The Antietam Institute just put out a book, The Brigades of Antietam, and he helped with that. And another one's coming out soon on artillery, so if you're into artillery, of it as well. Larry? Okay, we're back at the battlefield again. We're going to be, here's where the Dunker Church is. We're going to be talking about a little area over here where we're going to find our friend John Marshall. John Marshall, I don't know if you've ever heard of William Frazanito. These guys, I've got a book here by Robert Kolaski as well. These guys are absolutely dedicated to what they do. They go out onto the battlefield on the days that the battle took place. They take pictures, try to take them around the same time that they believe that Gardner had taken the pictures, to see if the shadows are similar, and they look at the backgrounds. I mean, they get really good glossy pictures, and they blow them up, and they look at all these things to try and figure out where in the battlefield they were. Frazanito did that, and he found John Marshall's grave, and he was able to read the board that was on top of his grave. He read his name. That's insane. He was with the 28th Pennsylvania. Okay, Larry. And here would be the grave. This is out behind the Visitors Center. And when I was there, the last day we were there, we met at the Mumma Farm, and then we talked around the Mumma Farm, and then we walked down towards the Visitor Center. And you know how you get these heebie-jeebies? You get the feeling that something's really good going to happen here? Well, if you show the next one, Larry, I walked by this area, and I found out that that's where John Marshall had been buried 159 years before. It'll be 160 years this year that this battle took place. Seems like we just celebrated the 150th. But anyway, so this is where he was. So, yeah, it's behind the Visitor Center. Go ahead, Larry. Now, just near where he was buried, over near the Mumma Farm, it's always been believed, because Alexander Gardner wrote it on his picture, that these were members of the Irish Brigade. And they're thinking, well, if we're selling these in New York City, there's a lot of Irish there. If they think he's Irish, we'll probably sell a lot of these pictures. But you know what? They believe from the map, and this is through Dana Schoaf. If any of you get the Civil War Times magazine, he's the editor. He went out there with Tom Clemens, and they believe that these are Germans from the Turner Rifles, the 20th New York, because that's where the graves are on your paper, all right? And so, see this right here, and this man right here? Right here, it looks like it's an axe handle, Larry? Well, here's a closer look at it. And it is believed, not by myself, I read this, that that's either an axe handle or maybe a pickaxe that he was impaled and dragged onto the blanket. So it's pretty brutal, but again, how much, I'm sure they must have been pretty numb by the time that they were finished burying all these guys. Okay, Larry? Okay, so here's the Dunker Church. This is about where the Visitor Center is, on top of these dead Confederates. And if they knew that today, that would be considered hallowed ground, and I'm sure they wouldn't have done it again. But right over here, above where that is where those 20th New Yorkers are. They were believed to be Irish Brigade, but the Irish Brigade was fighting down over here on the other side of the battlefield. So that's a pretty good distance away. So that's another reason why they don't think they were. This is Bloody Lane right here. It starts from here and comes down. This was all Alabamians, Alfred Colquitt, and the Cobb's Legion was down over in this area. Down this area was North Carolinians. And you can see all the dead Confederate graves over here. There's, I think it's 2nd Delaware that's right here. There's one. So I started looking in 2nd Delaware, and I went to their roster and started going down. I had a list of killed in action. I don't know where they buried them, but I don't know if I ever got to the correct guy. But these men right here I should say, and right over here, I'm assuming are old Blinky Eye William French's troops, because that's the area they came down through here to come down. And these men over here must be under General Israel Richardson, who was killed at the battle. He'd actually died like 2 months after the battle. And these separate graves over here are members of the Irish Brigade as well. Okay, Larry? All right, this young man died, he was struck over near the Mumma farm. He was 13 years old. He is the youngest fatality of the Civil War. The youngest fatality of the Civil War. He died 3 days after he was struck by a shrapnel. This is the Mumar house. It had been burned down by General Roswell Ripley because he didn't want them to use it as for sharpshooters. And after the Mumar family asked for reparations from the United States government, we didn't burn it down. The Confederates burned it down. You're getting nothing from us. This is what it looks like today. And this is where we started our Saturday off. Now, right over here, there's a tower. And that is the tower that's at the end of a 3,000-foot sunken road, bloody lane. And I have a picture that I took up from over there. But this is what it looks like today. Obviously, they rebuilt it. Now, this is just looking out. The bloody lane is here. You can see the topography. It's nice and rolling. You're being fired upon. You go down, you're not being fired upon. But there are Confederates all along this lane over here. This is from the Mumar farm. Larry? Now, these are some of the dead Confederate soldiers. They were on the Mumar farm. They would have probably dug a trench right here and just dropped them all in there and buried them. This is, normally you would see this picture, it's upside down, or I put it upside down from what you normally would see it. But this is another very, very sad instance. This young man, he looks like a boy of 13. I don't know how old he is really. And he crawled into like this little indentation. Probably the limestone had dissipated. And in death, he crawled in there. And there are papers around him. I don't know if someone, well, I know someone. People were stealing from all the bodies all day, all night long, especially all night long. So they probably went through his pockets. This is nothing I want, and just threw it away. But look how young. Larry? Okay, this is a Dr. Smith's. I guess if you're going to go to somebody's house to be taken care of, you want to go to doctor. Up here you have a 27th North Carolinian who died. His father was a wealthy farmer, so he may have had slaves. Miles Casey up here was a sergeant with the 108th. He was only 35 years old. And this Joseph Logan down here, he was in the 8th Ohio. And there's some interesting stories that I found about the 8th Ohio. This one young man, he had told his friends that morning that the bullet hadn't been cast yet that was going to kill him. His friend reported after the battle that he was struck at one time by no less than 12 bullets, never even made a groaning sound, and he died. And that's what he remembers him saying, that the bullet hadn't been cast. All right, once again, we're back at Tompkins Battery here. Look at this. They fired, this is 6 guns. They fired 1,050 rounds, which I did math, and it came out to about 175 rounds each. Can you imagine how hot those barrels must have been? They ran out of ammunition. They had to leave the field. But they fought off Confederates with the rammers. With, it was really hot there too. All right, this is that tower I'm telling you about. I'm up in the tower. This is Bloody Lane. Now this is where the North Carolinians would have been. And this is the Roulette Farm Road that's right here. And the other side would have been where the 5 brigades of Alabamians were, Alfred Colquitt and Cobb's Legion. I wish I'd put a shot in here of looking in this direction here, because that topography just goes like this. So if you were sitting, if you're a Confederate, they probably came up here to fire their first shots and then retreated back down there, because you can't see. If you're standing down in here, you can't really see what's up there. And over here, the 69th Irish Brigade, which there was the 29th Massachusetts, the 63rd, I think, and another one, 64th maybe. But they were the Irish Brigade. General Ma loved his men to use buck and ball. It was a 69 caliber musket ball and 3 BBs that were 31 caliber. And he loved them to use that, and they had their bayonets at the ready. He would like them to fire and attack. They lost about 50% of their men here. about 50%. So that's the view from the tower. They just refurbished it, and it's in great shape now, Larry. Now this is looking down right here, and I don't know, somebody recognized this guy as being Colonel Charles C. II of the 2nd North Carolina. He must have a very distinctive bald spot on his head to be able to pick him out there. But these guys up here, they upset their officers. So what did their officers do for them? Gave them burial duty. They are the undertakers in chief. That's not a job I want. Not even with whiskey, and I don't even like whiskey. Okay, Larry? Now this is looking back the other way. Where I was back at that tower, which wasn't there till 1897, now you're looking down the lane, you can see the bodies. It's a little difficult to see, but right up and over here, the next one, Larry, because there's some magazine art that replicates it, they piled up the bodies. So why do they pile up the bodies? Because the day after the battle, there was still Confederate sharpshooters that were firing at anybody that stuck their head up. So they piled up the bodies, supposedly, to hide behind them. If the bullet hits them, not going to hurt them. I wouldn't want to be behind those bodies. There's too much. The stench had to be terrible. All right, that's the end. This is the Roulette Farm Road right here. So the Alabamians would have been down this end, and then the North Carolinians would have been here. But this goes all the way to the Hagerstown Pike. Okay? And I don't know if you remember these, if any of you were at my last presentation 2 years ago, but this James Hope from the 2nd Vermont, he was a landscape artist. And this is usually the description that you get of Bloody Lane, that you could not walk across it without stepping on a body. And now General French, as I said, these would have been his men over here. I truly believe this would be Israel Richardson's men over here, including the Irish Brigade. But then all the rest, all of these, those are all Confederate graves. There were a lot more Confederates that died here than Union. Okay, Larry. All right, now this is down bridge number 3, which is where Ambrose Burnside was. This is going to become the Burnside Bridge. But up over here is Edward Miller, 51st. He's a corporal. You can see here on the map all the graves are going this way, but I'm going to show you a picture next. They're all against the wall going this way. Why did they change them around? I'm not sure, but all of the graves on this side of the river, the water is flowing down this way, so this is the left bank, that's the right bank. Everybody on this side, I didn't find one Confederate grave, and there are a lot more Union that were killed in this part of the battle than the others. Now this is, the New Yorkers would have been on this side over here, the Pennsylvanians on this side. They have a wall in front of them that they can hide behind. What did they have? A fence. Where do you want to be? Now, this is a witness tree. That tree was there about 175 years old, I'm going to guesstimate. And this bridge is 12 feet wide, 125 feet long. I can't run fast enough that I can outrun a bullet from behind us. The next shot's going to show when you look down, you're going to see what the Confederates are looking at. They're looking down on you. There are 350 to 500 Confederate sharpshooters up there picking the troops off as they try to come across. Finally, Isaac Peace Rodman, a general, goes downstream, finds a place to come around. Once they start to flank this group, then they pretty much retreated. This is looking from the Union side. These are all, this is what you're looking up at. So this is pretty nasty up here. If you ever read The Art of War, you never attack a high position. And this is where the Confederates were. Okay, Larry. And these are the graves right here. There's 12 headboards right here. 9 of them say 51st. But this is the side that the Pennsylvanians, 51st Pennsylvanians were on. And the irony is here, when these two groups took the bridge, they had gotten in trouble too. And when one private said, "Sir, if we take the bridge, can we have our whiskey ration back?" And he said, "Yes, you can." They took the bridge. They got their whiskey. But I keep saying I'm going to go there with a picture one time and find the way that all these stones are in the wall, exactly where this picture was taken. Do I have that much time? I don't know. That's the bridge right there behind us, by the way. And that's the witness tree. Okay, Larry? All right. Now, these are more pictures that were taken by Gardner. They say that they were taken above Burnside Bridge. This guy here, Kolaski, he refutes it. He cannot find anything in the background that looks like that on that side of the bridge. So there's something else somebody can look for. But another one of those guys goes there on the 17th, 18th, 19th to take pictures to make sure the shadows are very similar. Larry? All right, coming for the final approach. Burnside is set up as men, a mile long. Sounds like Pickett's charge, doesn't it? A mile long, he sets up all his men. They get over about 1 o'clock, about 3:30, they finally get underway with about 2 hours of sunlight left. Now, way up here, you're going to see that's the 9th New York. They are a Zouave outfit. You know, they got the big fancy pants and the fezzes and everything. Pretty cute. And they're they made it pretty much the farthest of anyone. Right down here is the 8th Michigan. And I started researching the 8th Michigan, and I found 4 privates that were buried on the battlefield. And you see their names right here: James Adam, Henry Tolman, Jacob Cleese, only 17, Sheldon Kroll, 18. And then over here, this name over here, he's from the 16th Connecticut. They get waylaid during the A.P. Hill's charge. And he had only been in the Army for 3 weeks when he was killed. 3 weeks. Jesse O. Barnes. I think it says Burns up here. Sorry, John. They spelled it B-U-2-R-N-S. But it's Barnes is his real name. Larry? Now, this is the 16th Connecticut. They were way out on the left wing. The 4th Rhode Island tried to come up on the side of them. The 4th Rhode Island comes up to help them. They look into the corn. There's all corn up there. And you saw how you can't see through the corn. But they can see blue uniforms and an American flag. And so the Rhode Islanders are saying, don't shoot, those are our guys. Until they shot the color bearer, and they found out that these guys had stolen the uniform. They borrowed them from Harper's Ferry. And if that story's true about the American flag, that's really pretty bad. But we're looking from the Confederate perspective, and that land goes down like this and back up again. Again, you'd never storm the high point. Larry? Okay, these are the Zouaves. You can see in the distance, those are the towers from the buildings in Sharpsburg. And there's the Confederates over there. The Zouaves are finally called back because over on the left wing, A.P. Hill has come in and has put him into the retreat mode. Larry? This is the high point. This is where these Zouaves got up to. They have on here their Hawkins Zouaves, toujours prêt. Having been a French teacher, I love seeing that. It means always ready. Always ready, toujours prêt. And it's a beautiful obelisk. I was the only one there. It's on a part of the battlefield. You'd have to go out to Harper's Ferry Road, and then you walk in maybe quarter mile, third of a mile before you come to this. But then when you turn around and look, it is so scenic, the rest of the battlefield. Okay, you can see over here, what they use the slats for? Pick up dead bodies. Okay, Larry? Better than impaling them, I guess. Here's one of those pickaxes I was telling you about. Look at the eyes on this young man right here. He looks like he's just a child. So the pickaxe, they use those to drag the bodies too. Go ahead, Larry. Now look at the eyes. Eyes too young to experience war, death, and rotting flesh on the battlefield. There's a case for PTSD right there, I'm saying. Go ahead, Larry. Now, it's 1866. It's 4 years after the battle. Hey, what are we going to do with all these guys anyway? They're all on these farmers' fields and everything. They're plowing them up. It's a mess. The bones are washing down into Sharpsburg. So they decide they buy some land, which happened to be in Confederate property at the time. Well, it was Confederate there. It was dedicated 5 years to the day after the battle in 1867. There are 4,776 burials there. And as you can see, 1,836 are unknown. They did stop burying people there in the 50s. There are Spanish-American War dead, there are World War I, World War II, and then they said, psst, that's it, no more. But they buried one in 2000. There was a young man from Shopsburg by the name of Roy. I think it was Howard Roy. But he was on the USS Cole that was struck in the Middle East, and he died, and they allowed him to be buried there with the rest of the servicemen. All right, if you go there, this is Old Simon. And I like Old Simon because he's 44 feet tall. I want him on my basketball team. He himself is about 22 and a half feet tall. And it's really, the official name is the Private Soldier Monument. It's really 27 pieces that they put together once they got it there, because this thing weighs like 200 tons. They would never be able to move it. He is 2 pieces. He connects at the waist. Next one, Larry. Now, I told you about the 20th New York that they thought was the Irish Brigade. They were the Turner Rifles. And the Turner Rifles, they were Germans. And they all belonged, or most of them belonged, to a gymnastics club or tumbling club. And that's how they had formed it. Over here, that is all in German. And it talks about the Gefallen Kameraden. On the other side, it's translated, erected in memory of our fallen comrades, by the survivors of our regiment. But that's carved out of stone. It's a drum, a kepi, a canteen. That's beautiful. Next one, Larry. Here we are, back to Old Simon. He wasn't put up there until 1880. But in 1876, there was a centennial in Philadelphia. They brought him there, and when they were transporting him back to bring him here, he fell into the Potomac, just the top part of him, and they had to fish him out and bring him up. And the last one, Larry. And here we have, this is what's written on here, not for themselves, but for their country. September 17th, 1862. Thank you. I'm gonna cry.